The sun set over the battlefield, casting long shadows across the torn earth. High above, an alien ship hovered, its metallic surface glinting in the fading light. Inside, General Zelron watched intently through a large window. He was not just an observer, he was a leader from the Galactic Empire, a force known for its cold and calculated tactics. But today he was witnessing something he had never seen before: human warfare. Zelron had heard tales of humans, stories filled with both admiration and disbelief. They were often described as reckless, emotional, and chaotic. But from his view, as he watched soldiers run, shout, and fight, he realized that there was more to them than he expected. Humans fought with a passion that was foreign to him. Every shout, every cry for help revealed a deep connection among them. His eyes narrowed as he focused on a group of human soldiers. They were pinned down behind a crumbling wall, bullets whizzing past. Despite the danger, one soldier named Jake, with dirt smudged across his face, leaped up from his cover. He dashed toward a fallen comrade, risking his life to drag him back to safety. Zelron felt a jolt of surprise. This act of bravery stirred something within him. It was a selflessness he had never seen among his own people. As the battle raged on, Zelron's heart raced. He found himself captivated by the unpredictability of the humans. They did not fight according to strict rules or strategies. Instead, they improvised. One soldier threw a rock at an enemy, causing a distraction while another took aim and fired. The humans worked together, communicating with shouts and gestures, a dance of chaos that somehow made sense. But the sight was also painful. The general felt a tightening in his chest as he watched the humans fall one by one. Their fierce determination was admirable, but it also led to loss. Zelron's own culture had taught him to avoid unnecessary casualties. They calculated their moves to ensure victory without bloodshed. Yet here he saw the cost of human bravery, and it shook him to his core. "Why do they fight like this?" he muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. He had always been proud of his people's strategic mind, but now he felt a sense of longing. What if there was more to warfare than just winning? What if it was about standing up for one another? As night fell, the battle began to wind down. The humans, though battered and bruised, had managed to push back the enemy. Jake, the soldier he had been watching, stood tall amidst the chaos. Zelron could see the determination in his eyes, a burning fire that refused to be extinguished. It was a fire that sparked something in Zelron as well. The general knew he had to make a choice. He could return to his people, proud and unyielding, or he could reach out to these humans, these warriors who fought with their hearts on their sleeves. But what would that mean? Could he abandon his duties? Could he betray his own kind? The thoughts raced in his mind. He looked back at the humans who were gathering their wounded and mourning their losses. He admired their resilience, their ability to care for each other even in the darkest moments. Zelron felt a strange pull toward them. He wanted to learn more, to understand what made them fight with such fervor. With each passing second, his resolve grew stronger. He realized that he was no longer just an observer. He had become a witness to something profound. The humans were not merely reckless. They were driven by a fierce loyalty that transcended fear. It was something he had never felt before. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Zelron made his decision. He would not return to his ship just yet. He would stay and watch, to learn from these incredible beings. Perhaps there was a chance for him to join them, to fight alongside them in their struggle. In that moment, the general knew he was on the brink of a change that would alter the course of his life forever. The next day, General Zelron found himself still hovering above the battlefield, but now he felt different. He was not just an observer anymore, he was a part of something bigger. As he gazed down at the humans preparing for another fight, his heart raced with anticipation and fear. Today would be different. Today he would get closer. After careful thought, Zelron decided to leave his ship. He put on a special suit that would help him blend in with the humans. The suit was sleek and designed to look like human clothing. With one last look at the stars, he stepped out onto the battlefield, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. As he approached the human camp, he noticed the atmosphere was tense. Soldiers were sharpening weapons, checking their gear, and whispering among themselves. Zelron took a deep breath, reminding himself of the bravery he had witnessed yesterday. He was determined to help, but he did not know how they would react to him. "Hey, who are you?" a voice called out. It was Jake, the soldier he had watched during the last battle. He squinted, eyeing Zelron with suspicion. The general felt a surge of nervousness. Would they accept him? "I am General Zelron," he replied, trying to sound confident. "I want to help you fight against your enemies." Jake exchanged glances with his fellow soldiers. They seemed unsure, but something in Zelron's eyes made them pause. "Help us? How?" Jake asked, still wary but curious. Zelron explained how he had observed their tactics and admired their bravery. He offered to share his knowledge of warfare strategies from the Galactic Empire. Slowly, the tension in the camp began to ease as they listened. Jake nodded, intrigued. "All right, let's see what you've got." That afternoon, Zelron began training the soldiers. He taught them new ways to attack and defend, sharing techniques that had helped his people win battles across the galaxy. The humans were amazed. They practiced hard, blending their raw courage with Zelron's strategic mind. It was an exciting and intense training session. As the days passed, Zelron grew closer to the humans. He learned their names, shared stories of his home, and listened to their tales of bravery and loss. He found himself laughing with them, something he had not done in a long time. They welcomed him into their circle, and he started to feel like one of them. One night, while sitting around a campfire, Jake spoke up. "Why did you decide to help us? You could have just gone back to your ship and ignored everything." Zelron looked into the fire, gathering his thoughts. "I was taught that war is about victory and power," he said slowly, "but what I saw in you was different. You fight for each other, for your friends, for your home. That is something powerful." The soldiers listened intently, and Zelron felt a bond forming between them. He realized that he had found a new purpose. He wanted to protect these brave humans who had welcomed him into their world. However, danger was looming. Reports came in that the enemy was preparing for a massive attack. The humans needed to be ready. Zelron knew that his training had given them new skills, but he worried if it would be enough. As the sun began to rise on the day of the expected battle, tension filled the air. Zelron looked at the humans around him, determined, scared, and ready to fight. He felt a surge of pride. They had become more than just soldiers. They were friends, allies, and family. "Today we stand together," Zelron declared, his voice strong. "We will fight for each other, just as you have fought for me. We are not alone anymore." The humans cheered, their voices echoing across the battlefield. In that moment, Zelron knew he had made the right choice. He was not just an alien general anymore, he was a warrior for Earth. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The turning point had come, and there was no turning back. The sun rose early on the day of the battle, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. General Zelron felt a mix of excitement and fear. He knew that today would test everything he had learned and shared with the humans. They had trained hard together, and now it was time to face the enemy. As the morning fog lifted, the sounds of the camp began to wake up. Soldiers prepared their weapons, checking their gear, and gathering for a final briefing. Zelron stood at the front, feeling both nervous and proud. He looked into the faces of the humans who had become his friends. They were ready, but he could see the fear in their eyes. "Today we fight for our homes," Zelron began, his voice steady. "We stand together side by side. Remember what we practiced. Trust in each other." The soldiers nodded, their determination growing. Jake stepped forward, his gaze fierce. "Let's show them what we're made of." His words ignited a fire in the hearts of the soldiers. They cheered, their spirits high, ready to take on whatever came their way. As the battle horn sounded, the group moved out. Zelron led the way, a mix of alien technology and human bravery guiding them. They moved in a line, adrenaline pumping through their veins. The distant sounds of the enemy's drums echoed, a reminder that danger was near. When they reached the battlefield, the sight was overwhelming. The enemy, a large and fierce alien army, stood ready, their weapons glinting in the sunlight. Zelron felt a knot in his stomach. This was it. There was no turning back. "Formation!" he shouted, quickly organizing the humans into a strategic line. They took their positions, hearts pounding, eyes focused. The air crackled with tension as the enemy began to advance. The first clash of metal rang out as the two sides collided. Zelron fought fiercely, using his alien strength and speed to protect his human allies. He could see Jake charging forward, rallying his fellow soldiers with courage. They fought with a fire that Zelron had come to admire. But as the battle raged on, Zelron noticed something disturbing. The enemy was more ruthless than he had anticipated. They attacked without mercy, using every trick in their arsenal. Zelron felt a surge of anger. This was not how war should be fought. During a moment of chaos, he saw a human soldier fall. Jake rushed to help, but the enemy was closing in fast. Without thinking, Zelron dashed forward, tackling an enemy soldier to the ground. In that instant, he crossed a line he had never considered before. "Get out of here!" he shouted to Jake. But in the heat of battle, he was losing sight of his own safety. He fought fiercely, taking down several enemies, but the odds were against them. He felt a sting on his arm as an enemy blade cut deep. "Zelron!" Jake yelled, but the general was already too focused on the fight to respond. He pushed through the pain, fueled by a desire to protect his new friends. Just then, a group of enemy soldiers surrounded Jake. Zelron felt a rush of panic. He had to save him. Ignoring the pain in his arm, he fought his way through the chaos, determined to reach Jake before it was too late. In that moment, everything changed. The battle became a blur. Zelron was no longer just a spectator or a strategist. He had become a warrior. He pushed his limits, fighting not only for the humans but for himself. He could not let fear stop him anymore. As he reached Jake, they fought back to back, taking down enemy soldiers with a powerful combination of their skills. They moved as one, their bond strengthening with every strike. Zelron felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. He was no longer an outsider, he was part of this team, this family. But just as victory seemed close, more enemy reinforcements arrived. The tide of battle turned against them. Zelron felt his heart race. They needed to retreat, but the humans were unwilling to leave their fallen comrades behind. "Back to the camp!" Zelron shouted, his voice strained. "We have to regroup!" Jake nodded but hesitated. "We can't leave them!" he shouted back, tears in his eyes. Zelron understood. They had come together as a unit, and the thought of leaving anyone behind was unbearable. In that moment, Zelron knew he had crossed a line. He had put his loyalty to the humans above his own kind, but now he had to lead them to safety. With a heavy heart, he made the call to retreat, trusting that together they would fight again. Together, they would stand against the darkness. After the fierce battle, the humans and General Zelron returned to their camp, bruised but alive. The tension in the air was thick as they gathered around a fire, reflecting on the chaos that had just unfolded. The sounds of battle still echoed in their minds, and the losses weighed heavily on their hearts. Jake sat silently, staring into the flames. He felt a deep sadness for those they could not save. Zelron noticed the look on his face. He understood that the weight of their choices was heavy. "We did our best," he said softly, trying to reassure him. "We fought together, and that is what matters." Jake looked up, his eyes filled with determination. "But we need more allies. We can't face this enemy alone. They are too strong." Zelron nodded, knowing Jake was right. The Galactic Empire had many enemies, and if they could unite with others, their chances of survival would increase. "We need to reach out," he said. "There are other factions who also oppose this enemy. We can form alliances." The next day, Zelron and Jake set out on a mission to find potential allies. They traveled to nearby settlements that had faced the same threats from the enemy. Each village had its own struggles, but they all shared a common goal: to fight against the invaders. Jake glanced at the soldiers gathered below. They were preparing their weapons, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "They've trained hard," he said. "We've trained hard. We can do this together." Zelron nodded, appreciating Jake's optimism. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for all those who have suffered. We will make our stand here and show them our strength." As the sun climbed higher, the sound of drums echoed from the distance, signaling the approach of the enemy. Zelron felt his heart race. He looked out over their forces one last time. "Gather around!" he shouted, raising his voice to be heard above the noise. "Today we stand as one. No matter what happens, remember that we fight together." The soldiers cheered, their spirits rising. Zelron could see the bond that had formed between the groups, a powerful unity that had grown over the last few days. They were no longer just allies, they were a family. As the enemy drew closer, the atmosphere turned electric. The ground trembled under the weight of their advance. Zelron's heart pounded in his chest. He quickly surveyed the battlefield, ensuring everyone was in position. The Varkans formed a solid front, their warriors standing tall and ready. The Terra's villagers took positions with their bows, and the humans held their ground, weapons raised. Then, as the enemy emerged from the trees, a silence fell over the battlefield. The opposing force was massive, a sea of dark figures armed and ready for war. They were fierce and intimidating, but Zelron refused to show fear. He focused on the strength of his allies beside him. "Now!" he yelled as the enemy charged forward. The air exploded with sound, shouts, the clash of metal and the thud of heavy boots hitting the ground. The two sides collided in a chaotic rush, and Zelron sprang into action, leading the charge. The battle was brutal. Zelron fought with everything he had, using his alien agility and strength to protect his friends. Jake fought bravely beside him, his human spirit shining bright. Together, they pushed forward, taking down enemies one by one. But as the fighting continued, Zelron noticed a shift. The enemy was relentless, pressing hard against them. He could see some of their allies faltering. "Hold the line!" he shouted, urging everyone to stay strong. "We can't give in!" Suddenly, a group of enemy soldiers broke through their defenses. They rushed toward the archers of the terrace villagers. Zelron's heart sank as he watched. He could not let them fall. "Jake, follow me!" he shouted, sprinting towards the danger. They fought their way through the chaos, their bond stronger than ever. Zelron swung his weapon, striking down enemies and creating a path for Jake. "Stay close!" Jake called out, determination fueling his movements. Together they reached the archers just in time. They fought back to back, taking out any enemy that came too close. But the enemy kept coming. Zelron felt exhaustion set in, but he pushed through, knowing he could not let his allies down. With each fallen enemy, the tide seemed to turn slightly in their favor. Then a new sound reached their ears, the unmistakable roar of Varkon warriors charging into battle. Thalor and his people surged forward, fierce and unstoppable. Their strength reinvigorated Zelron and the others. "Together!" Thalor shouted, leading his warriors into the fray. The Varkans broke through the enemy lines, pushing them back. Hope surged within Zelron as he realized they could win this fight. The battle raged on, but slowly, the enemy began to retreat. Zelron felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Keep pushing!" he yelled. "We have to drive them away!" With one last surge of energy, the combined forces pushed forward. The enemy, realizing they could not win, turned and fled, disappearing into the woods. Cheers erupted from their side, a powerful roar of victory echoing across the battlefield. As the dust settled, Zelron looked around at his friends, the allies who had fought together against all odds. They had made it through the battle, united in their strength. It was a victory, not just for themselves, but for all who stood against tyranny. Jake grinned widely, a look of disbelief on his face. "We did it! We really did it!" Zelron smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "Yes, we did. Together we are stronger than ever." As they celebrated their hard-won victory, Zelron knew this was just the beginning. They had forged a powerful alliance, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. United, they would protect their homes and each other, no matter what.